are we ready to bring the jury in?
Judge, may we approach the bench and just review procedural matters
Yes.
very quickly?
Oh, well. Tell him to wait 1 second. We want to check on the availability of a witness. Is it? Okay, we can bring him in.
Very present, Your Honor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Welcome back. During the overnight, I'm going to ask you my questions. If any of your answers to my questions are yes, please raise your hand. During the overnight recess, did any of you have any conversations with each other or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use an electronic device to get on the internet to do independent research about the case? People, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? No hands are being raised. Thank you very much. Mr. Manti, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please, the court state called Greg McKinney.
You solemnly swear from the testimony presented will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McKinney, if you would, please go ahead and introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Tell them who you are, where you work, and what you do.
Okay, my name is Greg McKinney. I work for United Security Alliance. We're a nationwide system integrators of video surveillance and access control. And I work in the IT department there.
How long have you been there?
Over about a year and a half.
You mentioned U.S. Security Alliance and video surveillance. Tell me in English what all that stuff does. What do you do?
Well, video CCTV is to go ahead and monitor for security reasons. Okay. What we do is we have cameras out there to monitor surveillance, and then we have access control, which is like your card systems to get in the building.
Now, where is your company based?
Tampa, Florida.
All right. And that's where you go to work?
Yes.
Does your company monitor video surveillance systems from places outside Tampa, Florida?
Yes, we're nationwide.
Does that include the Retreat at Twin Lakes Clubhouse community here in Sanford, Florida?
Yes, sir.
If I may approach you on? Yes. Mr. McKinney, I'll show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 185, at least at this point in time. Is part of what you do to review and download video surveillance from these types of systems?
Yes, sir.
Do you do that remotely?
Yes.
And tell me how that happens.
What we do is we connect over the internet to the DVRs that are on site, and then we go ahead and we can view the cameras there, and then we can download the video too.
Okay. And were you asked to do that specifically as it relates to an incident occurring at the Retreat at Twin Lakes, February 26th of 2012?
Yes.
All right. And if I could direct your attention up here, this is a portion of States Exhibit 1, which is already in evidence. It's an aerial view of that clubhouse. You familiar with that layout?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How many cameras does your company monitor at the Retreat of Twin Lakes Clubhouse?
9.
All right. Were there also cameras located at least physically at the front gate area of the complex?
Yes, sir.
And what did we learn about those cameras, at least as of February 26, 2012?
They were not functioning because it looked like a mower hit the cables.
Okay. Mr. McKinney, did you...
Could you repeat
I said the front gate cameras were not functioning because there was it looked like a mower hit the PVC pipe that was leading to it. Had the cables in there.
As far as the videos from the clubhouse, were you able to download all the known video surveillance from a period of time on that day?
Yes, sir.
And so that would be for all 9 cameras?
Yes.
And is that what is depicted in States Exhibit 185?
Yes, sir.
And there are 2 discs associated with States Exhibit 185. What is the second disc?
One is labeled copy, and the other one is the video clips pulled from the original data.
The one that's labeled copy, is that the full original data?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the other one is just clips from that same disc?
Correct.
Your Honor, if there's no objection, I will be moving States Exhibit 185 and evidence as the next number exhibit.
Approach for a moment.
Yes, you
Speaker,
may.
Your Honor.
Is there any objections to the introduction of Exhibit 185?
No, Your Honor, that's including both videos as one exhibit?
Correct, it's composite.
Composite.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, the composite exhibit will come in as states 185.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Mr. McKinney, back to resume. We were discussing the cameras that you located in the video footage that you download, which is now depicted in States Exhibit 185. What did you learn about the time on the video footage?
The video footage is actually 18 minutes off approximately.
Okay. And is that slow?
Yes.
So whatever time is depicted on the video, you actually have to add 18 minutes to, and that gets you to the accurate time?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's just the way the system was recording?
Yes.
Okay. As far as the camera locations, you mentioned there were 9. I want to talk about 2 in particular. Are there cameras both interior and exterior to the clubhouse?
Yes, sir.
I want to talk about the interior, in particular one that's called a kitchen camera. You're familiar with the clubhouse and where that camera is located?
Yes.
Okay. If I were to draw up here on States Exhibit 1, is that kitchen camera right about in this area of the clubhouse on the inside?
Yes, it is.
And which way does it face?
It faces the front,
So it faces out this way,
right out the window.
and that street is Retreat View Circle?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there also,
That's not Exhibit 1.
this is a, I'm sorry, it's not
But you said States Exhibit 1, it may confuse the record.
my mistake. This is the aerial view of the retreat at Twin Lakes, and this is particularly a zoomed in on the clubhouse. I thought it was, the original was States Exhibit 1.
Referred to as 1A.
Well, it's just a blown up section of
You
it.
need to put that on the record.
Right, right, if it's a blown-up section of Exhibit 1A,
That's what it is.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Exterior cameras. Is there one that's called the East Pool Hall camera? Is
Yes,
there also a West Pool Hall?
of course.
And is that because there's a hall between the building and the pool?
Yes,
Okay. Is the East Pool Hall camera located outside the building over in this vicinity?
yes,
And its direction of view, I guess, would be this way?
correct.
All right. This little thing here, what is that?
Is that the mailboxes?
Mailbox clip?
Yes,
So the camera actually faces that direction,
yes,
and this would be Twin Trees Lane?
correct.
The clips that you referenced from States Exhibit 185, Mr. McKinney, I'm going to first show you what we talked about as the kitchen video. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes,
So we're looking out onto Retreat View Circle from the interior of the clubhouse with the kitchen camera?
that's correct.
Right. And the time on it appears to be 18:50 and 33 seconds at the point we're beginning here, but you said you need to add 18 minutes to that?
Yes,
So it's actually 19:08 and 33 seconds thereabouts,
yes.
which is. All right, Mr. McKinney, was that something we just saw go by that window? Something?
I would object. Improper foundation for any opinion evidence by this witness. He's here as a records custodian.
Sustained.
All right, Mr. McKinney, the next view was the East Pool Hall camera. And is this the view from that camera?
Yes, it is.
All right, and so the mailbox kiosk, I guess, would be out here?
Right.
Okay, Mr. McKinney, I'm going to back up, and I just want to publish this one more time from the beginning. Anything else? And Mr. McKinney, I guess that the time beginning for this tape is depicted in the lower right-hand corner, down there. Let me circle it.
Yes, that's
Okay, and that's the you'd have to add 18 minutes to that one as well?
correct.
Thank you. No other questions, Your Honor?
Cross.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Were you working for this company back in February of 2012?
Yes.
Okay. When was it that you actually did the work that you're now talking about of distilling out this information onto a disk?
I did it the day afterwards, and then approximately, I think it was 3:21, I was asked to get the record, get it again.
Okay. Previous to this event happening, had you ever been to this area?
No.
So you know that's a pool because it looks a lot like one?
Well, I've been there just the other day, yesterday.
Just recently?
Yes,
When was that?
last night.
Oh, and that was at the request of the state
Yes,
to go familiarize yourself with the area to
correct.
testify here today?
Correct.
Before yesterday, you've never been there?
Right.
Okay, so you just sort of identified, familiarized where those cameras were?
Hmm.
And how, I'm sorry,
Yes, sir.
okay. Are they identified at your remote location by sort of a number or a location so that you know where to look here?
They're identified by name,
Okay.
East Pool, West Pool.
When was it that you realized that there was a malfunction with the timing mechanism?
The 28th, we had a service technician on site
28th
of February.
February of 2012?
Correct.
And
Okay,
any idea, any explanation how your system would be 18 minutes off?
That's just the nature of computers and clocks like that. They drift.
Okay. And you said approximately?
Yes.
You don't know exactly?
Not this time, no.
Okay. Could have been 19 minutes, for example?
I would say, within, several seconds of 18 minutes.
18 minutes dead on, or 18 minutes 30 seconds, or
Yeah, I'd say within 15 or so either way.
so a total span of some 30 seconds?
Yeah, that's just guess.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm just guessing there.
No, let's not guess.
Okay,
If you
well, I don't know then is the
Okay, So
answer.
if you don't know, I don't want you to
Okay.
guess. So,
No, but that's the answer then. No, I
What-
don't know.
okay, so you don't know how far off it is, but somewhere around 18 minutes.
Correct.
Could be 19? Could be 17?
Possibly. Yeah. That'd be a guess, so.
Okay, since we started with guessing, it could be 17 minutes, it could be 19 minutes, correct?
I don't know.
Okay. And do you know if this was a sort of concern that kept going, like it would lose a second an hour so that it might be a lot more, or was it a consistent, or do you even know that?
I don't know how long it lost it or the drift speed.
Okay. So actually, it could have been even several minutes more than that if there was just some malfunction, for example, that just happened and it was getting worse, so that by the time you retrieved it 2 days later, it was 18 minutes, but could have been 25, and it was just moving to the point of 18 when you caught it?
That'd be speculation. I don't know.
Okay. You have nothing to support any other contention, though, do you?
Right. I just know at the time I checked it, it was 18 minutes off.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Nothing further, Your Honor. Appreciate it.
thank you. Any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor. Ask you to be excused.
Mr. McKinney, you may be excused. Thank you, sir.
Do you solemnly swear from the testimony presented will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Good morning, sir. Could you state your name for the record?
Jonathan Good.
Your last name is spelled G-O-O-D, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are you married, sir?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
Might get in trouble for saying this. Little over a year.
Okay. And do you have any kids?
No.
Okay. What do you do for a living? What business are you in?
I work in finance.
Okay. And how long have you been in that line of work?
6 years.
Can you briefly tell us about your educational background, sir?
I'm an FSU graduate.
I'm not going to ask you for your current address, but are you currently living in Seminole County, Florida?
Yes.
I want to draw your attention back to February of last year, February of 2012. Were you living at a townhouse at Retreat Twin Lakes, specifically the address being 1221 Twin Tree Lane?
Yes.
Okay. And is that a townhouse that has bedrooms upstairs and then living quarters downstairs?
Correct.
At that time in February of 2012, when you were living there, how long had you been living there about?
3 or 4 years.
If you could, if you enter into
Is there any-
your residence back in February of 2012 at Twin Tree Lane, when you come in, what do you enter into?
Well, it depends on if, are you talking about the house?
I apologize, the house, yes, sir, I apologize.
You come in right past the bathroom and then the downstairs living quarters.
Okay. And are the stairs, where would they be located in that residence?
As soon as you make your way through the tile by the bathroom, you go right and the stairs are on the right.
Okay. And towards the back exterior of the house, is there a living quarters, meaning like a living room or dining room combination?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a sliding glass door that goes out into your backyard?
Yes.
Do you have a back porch, or I should say, back in February, did you have a back porch of that residence?
I guess it would be considered a back porch, yes.
Okay. Tell us what you mean when you say consider a back porch.
It's just a slab of concrete with 2 pillars on each side.
All right. And so you don't actually have a screened-in porch or anything?
No.
It's just a slab of concrete, you open the glass door and you step out and there's concrete.
Correct.
And if you were to step out, then in the backyard, is there a walkway that separates, I guess, your yard and then the yard from the townhomes across from you?
Yes.
Okay. On your sliding glass door, were there any blinds at all back in February of 2012 there, specifically on February 26, 2012?
Yes.
Tell us, if you could, about those blinds.
They were always closed.
Okay. And the blinds, what type of blinds are they? Just regular blinds, or are they any special?
Junky white tall blinds.
Okay. Are they vertical or horizontal?
Vertical.
Okay. And when you say they're closed, meaning the whole sliding glass door, you could not see out into your backyard?
Correct.
And was that back in February 2012 just on purpose, or?
Yes.
Okay. Let's focus on that February 26, 2012. Were you home that evening, sir?
Yes.
And at around 7:05, 7:10, 7:15, around that time, were you home with your wife that time?
Yes.
Okay. What were you all doing?
Watching TV.
Okay. And there might be more than one TV in the residence. Was it downstairs in the living room?
Yes.
Okay. If you could kind of explain to the jury the layout of the living room, do you have a recliner, sofa, and where were you, as best you can recall, where were you and where was your wife?
We were sitting on the couch against the left side of the wall. The kitchen's on the right. It's an L-shaped couch, and we were just watching the TV from there with the sliding glass door being on our left.
So if you were watching the TV, the sliding glass door would be to your left?
Correct.
Okay. And at some point while you were watching TV, I guess I should ask you, when you were watching TV, do you recall what program you were watching?
No.
Was the volume up, or some people watch it muted? Was the volume up?
We could hear the TV.
Okay. And in terms of how loud it was, do you recall at this time how loud it was?
No.
Okay. Did you hear some noise outside?
Yes.
Okay. And was the noise you heard outside such that you were able to hear it inside? In other words, was it loud, or do you recall, in terms of describing it to the jury, the noise that when you first heard it?
It was faint.
Okay. And in terms of where the noise was coming from in relation to your backyard, can you say it was coming from, if you were looking out the backyard, to the left, to the right, in front, or could you tell?
No, I could not tell.
Okay. When you first heard the faint noise, what did you think in terms of what was going outside, or did you have an impression as to what was going outside?
The first time we heard something, I didn't think anything of it.
Okay. And when we say faint, or when you said faint, I apologize, do you recall, could you make out anything other than some noise?
No.
Okay. Did you then hear further noises?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could describe to the jury when you heard a faint noise, then you heard further noise, was that like seconds later, a minute later, 2 minutes later? I know you didn't have a stopwatch, but.
Yeah, I believe I stated I can't really tell the time frame.
Okay.
It was maybe a couple minutes, maybe,
Okay.
but I can't be sure.
Okay. You weren't timing it, I gather. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't time daily life.
Okay. And then you heard some further noise, maybe a few minutes later. What was the noise you heard later?
The same noise, just louder. Seemed like it was getting closer.
Okay. At that time, when you heard, the second time you heard noise, could you tell whether the noise, could you make out any words?
No.
Okay. Could you tell whether it was one individual or two individual at that time?
No.
Okay. What happened then in terms of what's going on outside? After you heard additional noise, you couldn't make out any words, you couldn't tell whether it was one or two people, what then did you hear?
That's when I proceeded to go to the sliding glass door to look out.
Okay. So you literally got up from the couch, you went to the sliding glass door. Did you like open the blinds and just, or what did you do?
I cracked the blinds to see if I could see anything going on outside.
Okay. Now, are there lights, I'm assuming, inside the living quarters at that time where
Yes.
you were at? Okay.
Yes.
And are there lights outside?
There's one on the back porch.
Okay. Do you recall whether the light was on or not?
It was on.
Okay. Do you need to take a minute to get the drink?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. What I'm trying to ask is when you were looking outside, was your view obstructed in any way either by the interior lights of the residence or the exterior light?
I would say the screen obstructed it somewhat.
Okay. And as best you can tell the jury, when you looked out through the blinds, let's make sure we have a good description of when you looked out through the blinds, there, you said they were vertical, is that correct, or horizontal?
Vertical.
Okay. Did you kind of just peek through, or did you kind of move like a few, or how, describe
I
it as you.
peeked through one. If I moved a few, a couple of them would fall off probably.
Okay. And when you looked out, tell us what you saw from your vantage point inside the residence.
I couldn't really see anything except it looked like someone or something was out there.
Okay. What then did you proceed to do, sir? If anything.
Under direct reply from my wife not to go outside, I opened the blinds and opened the sliding glass door.
Okay. So you made a fatal mistake and disregarded your wife.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure there'll be more.
All right. I gather she was still in the living room?
Correct. She
And
was on the phone.
I'm sorry.
She was on the phone.
Okay. Was she just talking to somebody or?
She was talking to a technology service group probably. I think.
Something. I mean, it wasn't related. She didn't call
No.
911 at that point.
No.
Okay. So, but she distinctively told you not to go or go outside, but you disregarded her requests, commands, whatever, correct?
Yes.
And when you say you actually stepped outside, if you could demonstrate to the jury, I guess, or describe, I'm picturing a sliding glass door. Do you have to unlock it and then literally just, move it all, or is it, describe if you could how that.
Sliding glass door, you had to pull. The screened in part, you had to pull back. And I literally only took one step outside the door onto the concrete slab.
Okay. And when you say you took one step, or do you mean literally like you put like 1 foot in and you had 1 foot still inside?
Correct.
Okay. So you're 1 foot on the concrete, 1 foot still in the house. Are you looking at that time?
Correct.
Okay. What do you see when you look out there at that time?
It looked like a tussle. I could really only see one person, and I think I described it as possibly being some type of dog attack because there are a lot of dogs that walk in that back area, and I could only see, an object.
Okay. What then did you observe after that?
It seemed like a tussle. They were vertical to me, just like the blinds were. And then at one point, I yelled out, "What's going on?" and "Stop it," I believe.
Okay. So you watch football?
Yes.
Okay. You know how football, they have instant replay?
Yes.
I'm going to, as best we can, try to do an instant replay with you, realizing that don't have the, anyway. My question is, you stepped outside. In terms of how long you had 1 foot out, was it seconds? Was it minutes? How long do you think?
Seconds.
It was? Okay. And in terms of estimating, I'm assuming you still didn't have a stopwatch with you, correct? And your wife was not timing you at all?
No.
Is that accurate?
Accurate.
Okay. Can you estimate how long? Was it 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4, 5, 6, 7, or can you say?
In regards to
How long you actually, when you put 1 foot out and you were observing what you were observing?
a few seconds.
Okay. You mentioned when you put your foot out and you first saw something out there, you mentioned vertical. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
If I'm looking at someone in the backyard, they're faced directly onto the ground. So they're vertical. They're not horizontal. They're vertical to me.
Okay. All right. So they're vertical, meaning the same way you are right now in terms of like this.
So they would be making a T with the sidewalk, if that
Okay.
helps.
All right. In terms of the sidewalk that we're going to show you some photographs, how close to the sidewalk was, at that time, could you tell whether it was 1 or 2 people?
I couldn't tell at that time, no.
Okay. How close was the object, we'll call it, to the sidewalk?
They weren't on the sidewalk, but like I said, I could only see so far because it was vertical to me.
Okay. Could you make out anything other than there was an object there?
Not at that time.
Okay. And did the object end up moving?
The object,
What was on the ground? Did it
Yes.
end up moving?
Yes.
Okay. And in relation to where it was first, when you first observed it, to when you described the second time when they appeared, you said horizontal. How far from the original place did the object move? We don't know persons, but how far did they move?
not far, I wouldn't say, just up onto the concrete.
Okay, all right. At that point, could you tell there was one individual there at least, or 2 people?
I could tell there were 2 when they were still vertical.
Okay. All right. If you could you tell at that time, in terms of describing who was on top and who was in the bottom?
I could only see colors of clothing.
Okay. The color of clothing on top, what could you see?
It was dark.
Okay. How about the color of clothing at the bottom?
I believe it was a light white or red
Okay.
color.
And are you going from memory, since you stated it was only a matter of seconds, right?
I don't understand your question.
My question is, you're not making notes as you're doing this, you're not taking photographs or anything as you're doing this,
No.
right? Okay. And so positions changed. How long did it take for the positions to change? Was it just an ongoing process, or was there a stop, or?
It was quick because, like I said, I've only seen a few seconds of what happened anyway. So I would say 10 seconds max total for everything.
Okay. Could it be as little as 2 or 3 seconds?
It could be.
Okay. You mentioned the second positioning, or the change in position, if we call it, they were horizontal. At that point, could you tell there was still 2 individuals, the same people?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of describing the individuals, are you able to describe their faces or anything, or just clothing descriptions?
Well, going back to when they were vertical, I could tell the person on the bottom had a lighter skinned color. Correct.
Okay. All right. And when you saw them horizontal at that positioning, who was on top and who was in the bottom?
It was the same position still.
Okay, all right. If you can, describe the position of the person on top in relation to the person on the bottom.
I believe I described it as a straddling position
Okay, and what do you mean by that?
with the legs over the lower part of the body.
And the person on the bottom, could you tell whether that person was face up or face down?
Face up.
When you first observed now you know 2 individuals, at that time, could you see whether the person on the bottom was face up or face down?
You said when they were vertical?
When you first saw them, when you first stepped out, could you tell at that time whether the person on the bottom was face up or face down?
When I first stepped out, no, because I couldn't see anybody.
Okay. And then at some point when you observed the second time you're talking about, you saw the person on the bottom was face up,
Correct.
and the person on the top you said was straddling, I believe you described it?
Correct.
Okay. Could you tell what was going on at that time?
I think at that time is when I thought it was serious,
Okay. What made you think that?
because it looked like there were strikes being thrown or punches being thrown. But as I clarified, due to the lighting, it could have also been, holding down.
Okay.
But there were arm movement going downward.
And the arm movements that you described, would that have been from the person on top?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that was a dark-colored attire of some type?
Correct.
Okay. The person on top, if you can, you're saying arm movement. How would you describe the arm movement?
Shoulder down.
Okay. Could you see that person's hands?
Just appendages.
Okay.
It's too dark to
Okay.
see that type of stuff.
Yes, sir. The person on top, could you tell whether that person on top was actually striking, and here's what I'm going to do, were they going like this?
I could not hear that, no.
Could you hear this?
No.
Could you tell whether the person on top was just holding the person or trying to hold the person on the bottom?
At this point, Your Honor, I would object, that's leading.
I think you stated, but your testimony in terms of whether the person on the top was holding down the person on the bottom, could you tell?
I said that could have been possible, as there was arm motion going downward, not just once, but multiple times.
Okay. So you can't say one way or the other, whether, or can you say?
I can't 100% say, no.
You mentioned you said something. Did you yell that out, or did you say please, or how would you describe it? And if you could, as best you can, recreate that in whatever tone of voice you use to say something.
That's pretty hard going back to that date on the tone of voice.
Okay. Was it loud?
It was enough for that I thought they would be able to hear me.
Okay.
Yes.
And again, what do you recall saying to the two individuals?
At first it was what's going on, and no one answered. And then at that point I believe the person on the bottom I could finally see, and I heard a help. And then at some point I said, cut it out, and then I'm calling 911. Is that when I thought it was getting really serious?
Okay. And when you're stating what you're saying, are you doing that pretty quickly, or are you pausing like you are now?
I would say pausing,
Okay.
and I think that would equate to about the time that I said to.
Okay. But you're yelling it or saying it loud voice so they can
Yes.
hear? You mentioned that when you first stepped out, I neglected to ask you, at that time, did you hear any kind of yelling at any time from one of the two individuals out there?
Not initially when I stepped out.
And when you did step out and you said something, did any of the individuals, prior to you saying something, did you hear any of the individuals saying something at that point?
No.
Okay. And you mentioned that they said something. Was that after you said something to the individuals?
Yes.
Okay. Could you say unequivocally to this jury who was saying something?
100% no.
Okay. And why is that?
I'm just taking it off of being rational.
And you believe the person on the bottom would have been saying something when they observed you?
Correct. And if it was coming from on top, it would have echoed off a wall instead of coming directly at me.
But can you say unequivocally that it was the person on the bottom versus the person on the top?
Sorry, Your Honor, that would be asked and just answered.
Overruled.
Can you say unequivocally that it was the person on the bottom versus the person on the top that was saying help?
Not 100%, no.
Okay. And in regard to the person that said help, if you can, the person that said help, was it help, 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 continuous, or was it, or how would you describe it, more than one?
I believe it was just one or maybe two.
Okay. And then after that, what happened?
That's when they moved up onto the sidewalk.
Okay. At that point, what happened?
That's when I saw them in the straddle position, thought it was getting very serious, and said I was calling 911.
Did you then turn around and go back in?
Correct.
Did you close your sliding glass door?
I probably didn't care about the sliding glass door.
Okay. Did you call 911?
Yes.
Okay. As you are turning around, I guess, and going back inside your residence, or I shouldn't say turning around, just putting your foot back inside your residence, are you hearing any screams or yells for help from outside there?
At that time, my adrenaline was going. I can't remember.
Okay. You know, I neglected to ask you something at the very beginning. When you first heard something and then you stepped outside, the TV, was the volume still going? In other words, did you mute it, or did
It was muted.
Okay. The light that you had on outside, Did it remain on the whole time, or did you turn it off when you stepped back in?
No, it remained on.
Okay. When you stepped out, you mentioned 2 individuals that you've described. Did you see anybody else out there?
Not at first.
Okay. At some point later on, did you see individuals?
At the very end, after,
Yes, sir.
yes.
When you are stepping outside and you said something, did you notice any other neighbors or anything, even if you didn't see them outside? Did you notice anybody like peeking out or anything, from any of the windows, or were you paying attention to that?
My focus wasn't on that.
At the point where you're seeing the 2 individuals, one on top of the other, and I think you described a straddling position, can you see the person on the bottom, their hands?
They were at a side view, so I don't think so.
Could, and by that, could you tell whether the person on the bottom had a gun out already?
No,
You can't say one way or the other?
I can't tell, no.
Sir, I'm going to play the 911 recording with the assistant, Ms. Walker.
Any objections?
No, you don't.
911 Unit, please fire medical.
Police, I just heard it.
I apologize. I neglected to put on the record what the exhibit number is. For the record, that is State's Exhibit 162.
911 Unit, please fire medical.
Police, I just heard a shot right behind my house.
Where at?
1221 Twin Trees Lane. They're wrestling right in the back of my porch.
You just heard one shot go off?
It was either that or a rock at the window or something. I don't know. The guy's yelling help, and I'm not going outside.
Okay, 1221? You said 1221.
No, 1221 Twin Trees Lane, Sanford, Florida.
122.
One two two one Twin Trees Lane, Sanford,
Is
Florida.
that 1 or 2 words? Because it's not accepting it.
Twin Trees is 2 words.
Okay, and you can hear somebody yelling for help?
I'm pretty sure the guy's dead out here. Holy shit.
Okay, we have several people calling in also. Anything else that you heard?
No, the guy yelling help. Oh my god. No, there's a guy with a flashlight in the backyard now.
Okay.
I think there's flashlights and there's a guy.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a cop. Oh my god.
Okay, I have several calls, and you just heard, did you hear when you heard voices? It was just one person talking, right?
There's 2 guys. There's 2 guys in the backyard with flashlights.
Okay.
And there's a black guy down that looks like he's been shot and he's dead.
Okay.
He's laying, and there's multiple people calling right now, I'm thinking.
Okay. I have several officers going out there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Mr. Good, you recognize that being your voice?
Unfortunately,
Okay. You mentioned that somebody with a flashlight, is that what you were saying, that later other individuals appeared, is that correct?
yeah, it looked like people came around the corner at some point.
Okay. I want to go back to the, what you described out there, and I think you described straddling position. And is that because of the posture of the person on top versus the person on the bottom?
It's both, yeah.
Okay. At some point, you also used the word, or descriptive words as MMA style. Do you recall saying that?
Yes,
Okay. And did you mean by that what, sir?
as a straddle position like that.
Okay.
It's a common position you would see in a,
So is that like, MMA is like mixed martial arts, is that correct?
Correct.
Do you watch that on TV and stuff, or?
Not recently.
Okay. But when you say that, are you referring to just the position the person on top had over the person on the bottom, or, I don't want to put words in your mouth, what do you mean by MMA?
And the actions of the arms
Okay,
just looked like something that I'd seen on TV before, so that's why first thing that came to my mind.
okay. Could that also be referred to like wrestling, that type of thing?
I don't understand your question.
My question is, did you ever see the person on top pick the person from the bottom and actually slam them into the concrete?
No.
Did you ever see the person on top slamming the person on the bottom's head on the concrete over and over and over?
No.
Did you see at any time the person on top grab the person on the bottom's head and slam it into the concrete?
No.
Sir, back when you were living in that residence back in February of last year, I believe Miss Lauer also used to live there. Is that correct? She was your next door neighbor?
Correct.
And at some point, I believe in a deposition, you actually heard the recording that 911 call that she made where there's cries for help.
Yes.
You recall that?
Yes.
Prior to that deposition, had you heard that recording?
No.
Okay. And at that deposition, when you heard the recording, did you make an observation as to whether you felt that was a different cries for help than the ones you heard?
Audibly, it didn't sound the same as what I heard outside.
Did not sound the same. Thank you. Sir, I'm going to show you some photographs, and hopefully, with the court's permission, may I publish those to the jury, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
First of all, State's Exhibit number 1, and again, I'm going back to February of last year, so hopefully you've remembered. Do you recognize this? I guess it's a Google photograph, aerial photograph of the retreat of Twin Lakes?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to, as best I can, blow up an area. You were living at this residence right here, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the backyard we're talking about in the sidewalk, or I think people have referred to it as dog path, would this be it right here?
Yes.
Okay. So is the area that you're talking about, am I circling it right here?
Yes.
Okay, and for the record, that was State's Exhibit number 1, and I've just emphasized a part of that exhibit. Sir, I'm showing you now State's Exhibit number 6. Can you make out your backyard on that exhibit, sir?
I guess.
Okay. Would this have been Miss Lauer's residence, and your residence is right here, the backyard?
Yes.
Okay, or the back sliding glass door?
Correct.
Okay. I neglected to ask you about the conditions in terms of the weather that night. February 26, 2012, at around 7:05, 7:10, 7:15 p.m. Is it safe to assume that it was dark at that time, sir?
Yes.
And do you recall the weather condition in terms of whether it was raining, snowing, or what was going on?
Definitely wasn't snowing, but it was very nasty outside.
Okay. And nasty meaning the rain and et
It
cetera?
was raining off and on all night.
Okay. State Exhibit number 7. Are you able to tell there what we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. And from this vantage point, would this be the, I guess, the dog receptacle that I'm circling right here?
Yes.
And this would be going towards, your residence would be over here to this side somewhere?
Yes.
And I say your residence in terms of back in February of last year, the backyard, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. State's Exhibit number 33, this would have been your residence right here back in February of 2012, and this would have been Ms. Good's residence?
Incorrect.
Okay. I'm sorry, tell me what State's
You
Exhibit
said
30
Miss Good. We don't live in separate homes.
I meant Miss Lauer. I apologize. I don't want to get you in trouble with your wife now. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Ms. Lowers, excuse me.
Correct.
Okay. And for the record, the street address is right there in the front of that residence, correct? 1221?
That's not the street address, that's
I'm
the
sorry,
number
the
of the
numerical
home.
address to the residence.
Yes,
Okay. And for the record, that is Twin Tree Lane, is that correct?
yes.
Okay. Ms. Waldrop, I've messed up the exhibit. Oh, thank you. I'm going to show you now today's exhibit 39. Do you recognize that photograph? And I realize it's a daytime photograph.
Yes,
And the backyard we're talking about is this right here?
yes,
And can you see, I guess, do I have the cursor or the arrow? It would have been your sliding glass door, the blinds you're talking about?
that would be the one on the left, actually,
Okay.
if that's what you're referring to.
Yes, right, okay. And okay, all right. And this would have been Ms. Lauer's back porch at that time, back in February of last year?
Correct.
Okay. That's all the photographs I had of you, but I do need the assistance of Madam Clerk. We have an exhibit, the big diagrams that are in evidence. I don't think they're out here. We may, do I need to get them from somewhere? Okay. May I have the court's assistance, Madam?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, ma'am. Did you live at, right here at 1221?
Yes,
And in terms of this exhibit, State's Exhibit 139, back in February of 2012, when you lived right here at 1221, there's a depiction of a person there. Is this about the area where you're describing you saw?
beginning or end.
Tell me if using this, just kind of point where you, in the beginning and the end, that as best you can recall when you observed something in there and then went back inside.
Yes,
Okay, all right. And you mentioned concrete. Is this the sidewalk we're talking about?
yes,
Okay. Mr. Good, you went back inside, called 911. At some point, do you hear a gunshot?
yes.
Okay. Do you recall whether that was before you called 911, doing the 911 call, or after the 911 call?
I believe it was while it was dialing.
Okay. In terms of how long, do you know how long it took you to dial? Did you do it, I mean, did you run to your phone and grab it, or did it take you a minute? Did you say to your wife, honey, I did go outside, sorry? Or do you recall how long it took?
Oh, she could see me. No, it was probably right inside. I usually keep my phone next to me.
Okay. And do you believe the 911 call, I'm sorry, the shot was while you were dialing, or you were actually on the line?
When I was on the line waiting to get picked up, correct.
Okay. If I may have a moment, Your Honor. When you went back inside and you heard a gunshot, prior to that, did you hear any more yells for help at all?
I don't think I was even focusing on that.
Okay, you were just focusing on calling 911?
Yes.
Okay. terms of I think you stated 3 cries for help or 3 statements of help when you went outside and there was 2 people there?
I think I stated 1, 2 maybe.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
Could have
1
been
or 2.
possibly 3. I don't know.
Okay, don't want you to guess, but you're definite 1 or 2.
Yes.
Was it all one voice or was it more than one voice?
It sounded to be the same voice.
And you're not able to identify that voice, or are you able to identify it?
Not 100%, no.
And to make sure the record's clear, what you heard when you looked out there and saw the 2 individuals and you heard one say help, did you only hear help, help, or did you hear anything else other than help, help?
That's all I heard.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley.
Don't really want to be here, do you?
I guess it has to be done.
Sure. You were very reluctant to be involved in the case at all, correct?
Correct.
Had actually not only been one of the witnesses who requested that your anonymity be continued because of your concerns about your involvement in the case?
Correct.
You understand that though we were able to accomplish that up until today, or I guess openings, that we couldn't do it because of the way the process works.
Correct.
Still willing, of course, as you are, to come here and tell us as best you can recall what you said and what you saw both that night and what you told other people, correct?
Yes.
Let's then talk about that night, and Mr. Delarondo walked you through it. I want to try and do it after defining some of the terms that you used to make sure that it's very clear. You're watching TV, correct? And you
Yes.
first hear some noise outside that gets your attention, correct?
Yes.
And I think you said that was sort of this noise or yells or something, wasn't it?
I didn't say yells.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
I just said a noise in the distance.
Okay. May I first look at this one? And just to orient both you and the jury, I'm going to look at this from behind you. It's been identified that you live here, correct, or lived there back
Correct.
then. And that I think you said the noise came from as you're looking out which way when you first heard the noise.
When I first heard the noise, I
Yeah.
wasn't looking out, so I couldn't tell which way it came from.
Could you tell at all from what direction?
Just that it was faint and seemed like it was getting closer.
Okay. Could it have been from this area, for example?
I thought we weren't speculating.
I'm just asking what your opinion is. It could have been.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Okay. So that got your attention enough that you turned off or muted the TV, right?
I muted the TV, correct?
Okay. And then what was the very next thing that caught your attention?
I heard it again, but it seemed like it was getting a little louder.
Could you tell at that point where it was coming from?
It just seemed like it was getting closer
Okay.
to where I was.
And in response to that, what'd you do?
That's when we muted the TV again, and I proceeded to the sliding glass door.
So there was a time in between the two where you turned the TV down because of the first noise, turned the TV back on.
Yes.
And do you recall about how long of a time that was between the two?
No.
Could you have said previously that it was maybe a couple of minutes?
Well, you were wanting a time frame, so yes.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you had said it was a couple of minutes, right?
Sure.
Okay. Does that sound about right still?
I guess, like I said, we weren't keeping track of time, so it
Sure.
could have been a couple minutes.
All right. And then the next noise got your attention. You muted the TV again, and what else did you do?
That's when we muted the TV and I went to the sliding glass door.
Okay. And looked outside, and I want you to say again what you saw, but then I'm going to ask you to break a little bit along the way because I want to define some terms, okay? So when you first looked out after that second noise, what did you see?
I couldn't really tell what was out there.
Okay. Tell us as best you can your view and what it was.
Like I said, I couldn't tell what was actually out there, so that's when I opened the sliding glass door, opened the screen, and took a step out to see what was going on to get a better view.
Okay. And tell us what you saw.
It looked like I said, maybe possibly a dog tussle, or, but I could only see one person out there at that
Okay.
time.
You used the terms vertical, horizontal, and I want to just sort of clarify those so that we're on the same page. I'm going to use horizontal as being laying flat on the ground. Okay?
Well, that's your perception of it. If you're looking at them, that would be horizontal a different way.
Okay? That's why I want to clear it up. I'm going to suggest and see if we can agree for this conversation that horizontal would mean that they're laying on the ground flat. I'm not saying anyone was yet, we'll get to that, but that the term horizontal means basically you are laying on the ground flat.
They were laying on the ground.
Okay. And then vertical would be, as I am now, standing up vertical, and we'll get to some more in a minute, but right now, can we agree that I'm standing up vertically?
Correct.
Okay. With that in mind, as best you can, describe the scene that you saw from your perspective. And first tell me about how far away this was that you were looking at.
It was closer to the sidewalk, but not on the sidewalk.
Okay, about 15, 20 feet?
I guess, yes.
Okay. If the sidewalk was about 20 feet away from your porch to the sidewalk was about 20 feet, would that be close to accurate?
20 feet from the slab of concrete on my porch
Yes.
to the sidewalk?
Yes.
I guess.
Okay. Let's use that for now, and we'll see how we can tie that up in a little bit.
Okay.
About how far then, was it about that 20 feet, almost to the pathway or the concrete path?
Yeah, it was close to the sidewalk.
Okay. And again, tell me now, using the terms we've agreed to, what was it that you remember seeing?
They were laying on the ground, and if you fell back vertically, that's how I would be looking at them.
So if I was on my back vertically, that was one of the people?
That was how I could see it. But
Okay.
the one that I could see in the beginning, his back was towards me, but facing downward.
Okay. Well, let me say it like this, if I might approach it somewhat. The person that you could see, you said you saw his back.
Mm-hmm.
Was he like this?
At the beginning, no.
Okay. How was he? And just sort of point me how he was when you first saw him.
You'd have to go all the way to the ground.
Over more. Like that?
No. It was more just flat on flat.
Okay. So one person horizontal on top of the other?
Correct.
Okay. And then when did that change?
When it moved up to the sidewalk.
Okay. So as we now move closer to the sidewalk, what is the positioning of the two, or what you see?
It happened very quick,
Okay.
but that's when it was at more of a straddle position once it got onto the sidewalk.
And when you say straddle, can you explain that in more detail?
Do we get another
If you wish.
visual?
Sure.
No, I'm okay.
Let's try it this way. I want to do it so not just you get to embarrass me, but the jury gets to see it as well.
No, it was more just the person on top's legs were over the person on the bottom that was laying flat on the ground.
Okay. So now the person on top is in fact like this over the person on the bottom?
I would say that's accurate.
Okay. And the person on the bottom was laying flat?
Correct.
Could you tell if he was on his back or not?
He was on his back.
He was on his back. At this point, what's the person on the back wearing? I'm sorry, the person on the top whose back you can see wearing?
It was the same person that was on the top when they were T-shaped to the sidewalk.
Okay, so they did
dark
not.
colors.
I'm sorry. They did not change positions, did they?
No.
Except one, the one on top in the black, actually instead of laying down on the guy on the bottom, was now straddling him, correct?
Correct.
And they are now closer to the cement pathway, correct?
They would be on the cement at that point.
On the cement. And what movement were you, I want you to sort of walk us through that, but at the point now, tell me when your focus of attention is really on what they're doing. Is it at this point with the straddling?
Well, it was on the entire time, but like I said, it was only probably 8 to 10 seconds from what I remember because it was so quick.
You
But
had
when-
said, I'm sorry, you were saying?
But when they were on the concrete, the position was with arm movement going downward.
From the time that you were first stepped out to watch them until the time you turned back around was about 8 to 10 seconds, correct?
I would say because it was very quick.
So
it
8 to
wasn't-
10 seconds?
Yeah, it wasn't a long time, no.
Okay. Mr. Delaround asked you if it could have been as little as 2, and I thought you said yes, but it was a lot more than 2, wasn't it?
I didn't state the entire thing was 2 seconds, no.
Let's do that then. The entire time that you were actually watching what was going on,
8 to 10 seconds
8 to
probably.
10 seconds.
Yes.
And that's when you had your focus specifically on what turned out to be, as we now know, Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, right?
Correct.
You didn't know it then, but now we know who they were.
Yes,
So 8 to 10 seconds you were watching them do whatever was happening.
I would say yes.
Okay. And you were talking about a movement or a struggle that you saw. Tell me more about that. What
At
did
the
you
beginning
see?
or the end or the whole thing?
Beginning, at the beginning.
Like I said, when I walked out, it looked like it was only one person. Then I could see a second person, and it looked more of just a tussle. And that's when I thought it got serious, when it moved up to the sidewalk and he was more in a straddle position and arm movements were going downward. But I couldn't 100% say those were actually strikes or if they were just arm movement going downward.
Of course, because you are trying, as you testify here today, to be extraordinarily literal, aren't you? Be very careful that what you say is only what you saw.
Well, that would have been through the whole thing because that's the same thing I said in a deposition.
Sure. And even in your initial statement, when you first had an opportunity to talk to an officer about this, the very first time, you explained as best you can recall what you saw, right?
Correct.
And what you saw was the person on top in an MMA-style straddle position, correct?
Correct.
That was further described, was it not, as being ground and pound,
Correct.
right? What is ground and pound, as you
That's
define
usually
it?
what takes place in that type of position.
Sure. So MMA, to the extent that you're aware of it, and MMA is mixed martial arts,
Correct.
you knew it enough to start giving terminology like ground and pound to what you saw, right?
It was the first thing that came to my mind, yes.
That the person on top was ground and pounding the person on the bottom?
That's what it looked like, yes.
So, explain what ground and pound is in your mind.
The person on top being able to punch the person on the bottom, but the person on the bottom also has a chance to get out or punch the person on top. It's back and forth.
Sure. And which is the dominant position?
It would be the top position.
Because why?
For most people, that would be the dominant position.
Because you're on top of the other person, right?
Usually that's a positive, I would think.
Sorry, it distracted me a bit, so I want to make sure it didn't distract the jury, and I apologize for that. So I'm going to go back, even though I know that you answered it, I didn't fully absorb it. So let's just start by telling me again what ground and pound is.
It's usually when the person's on top in a mounted position, I believe, in the dominant position. But like I said, the person on the bottom is able to, get out of that position or, throw punches back. But I did not see any of that.
Okay. The dominant position of being on top is because you actually have all of your weight on the person's hips, right, holding them down?
Correct.
And from that position, the person on the bottom really can't move very much and can't get very much movement or very much leverage, can they?
I guess that depends on the type of person that's on the bottom.
Sure. And how well trained they are in MMA, right?
I don't know if you have to be trained, but I'm sure some other things come into play. I don't know.
Okay. Yet the person on top in that dominant position then has his arms free, right?
Correct.
Might have the person on the bottom's arms actually under his knees in that position, right?
What objective speculation versus at the scene or MMA in general?
Well, at the scene, speculation sustained as to MMA, I think you need to lay a better bracket.
Sure. I mean, you've watched MMA fights enough to know what ground and pound is, right?
Sure.
And in certain ground and pound positions, they can actually, the person in the dominant position on top can actually get the guys in the bottom arms under his knees so that he virtually has free access to rain blows down upon him, right?
Well, I would think that would mean his arms were above his head or close to his head, but no, I don't know.
Okay. Nonetheless, the person on top has his arms free, correct?
Correct.
And in this, now let's go to this case that night that you saw. The person who you now know to be Trayvon Martin was on top, correct?
Correct.
And he was the one who was raining blows down on the person on the bottom, George Zimmerman, right?
That's what it looked like.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, and I said a moment ago you were literal because you couldn't actually see fist hit face, right?
No.
Because it was blocked by what?
I didn't say it was blocked. I said it was dark out.
Okay. And you were looking at Trayvon Martin's back, right? Wasn't that what was towards you?
Incorrect.
Then
On
tell
the
me what it was.
sidewalk, they're side to me because they're laying on the sidewalk, which would be going lateral to my
Oh,
house.
that's right. When they
parallel.
I'm sorry. By the time they got up to the sidewalk, they had sort of moved into a position where it was a little bit more. You can see what would have been George's left side or right side.
It would have been his right arm.
Okay, his right arm was towards you, and then Trayvon Martin's left side would have been a bit more towards you, right?
Correct.
And then that's when you saw him striking down.
That's when it looked like, yes, arm movement going downward. Correct.
How many times do you think? If you had
I
to
have
guess?
no idea. As soon as I saw the movement going downward, that's when I turned around and went back inside.
That's when you knew it was very serious.
Yes, it looked like it was getting serious, and it wasn't just someone playing around.
And that's when you can hear George Zimmerman screaming for help, right?
Incorrect.
What was it? When was it?
That was in the beginning when I finally saw someone under the person on top.
And I apologize for not asking the question the right way. When was the first time that you heard the person on the bottom scream for help?
When I initially went outside, didn't see a second person, then I could see a second person, and it sounded like it was coming from the person on the bottom because usually when someone's on top, the person on the bottom is the one screaming or yelling. And that was when I heard that, but I didn't hear anything after that.
Okay. And balancing, you're trying to be literal and just tell us exactly what you remember observing and using your common sense. Do you think that it was the person on the bottom who was screaming for help?
I mean, rationally thinking, I would think so.
Okay. Matter of fact, I think you said in response to Mr. Delarounde's question, had it been Trayvon Martin screaming for help, since his back was to you, it would have had to be going, the yell would be going away from you, and I think you said it would have to bounce off the wall before you heard
I mean, I
it.
think it would sound different.
Okay.
That's why in my head I thought it was coming from the person on the bottom.
And the sound that you heard was sounding like a person screaming from 15 or 17 feet away, almost directly at you, right?
It sounded like it was coming towards me, correct.
Okay. Now, and I'm sorry to jump back to that. I apologize. So they are now moved up. They're now in the true ground and pound position. And Mr. Delarounde, I think, made some histrionics about what you heard and what you didn't hear. So I now have to do it as well. Okay? Did you hear something like this?
No.
Okay. Could something like that have happened without you being able to hear it?
Speculation.
Sustained.
Were you paying attention to the noise of the ground and pound that you were watching?
Probably not. I was just seeing to make sure if it was serious or not, and that's when I went back inside.
Okay. Have you ever heard the sound of a skull being smacked against concrete?
I can't remember.
Have you heard the sound of a fist driving into a nose or a head or a face?
I can't remember.
So while it wasn't the histrionics that Mr. Delarounde suggested, it certainly could have occurred that Mr. Trayvon Martin was hitting Mr. Zimmerman, but you just don't remember today the sound of that?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained. Rephrase your question.
Sure, I'll rephrase it. You're certainly not telling this jury that you're certain that Mr. Martin wasn't striking George Zimmerman in the face, right?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. You're certainly not telling this jury that you know that Mr. Martin was not striking George Zimmerman in the face. You just
I
don't.
can't 100% confirm that that was happening.
Right. And you just don't want to say that Trayvon Martin was taking George Zimmerman's head and hitting it on the cement because you didn't actually see that, correct?
Yeah, I couldn't see that.
Okay. And it was because of the darkness and the positioning of the people?
Yes.
Okay. You, of course, have testified during your deposition and other times regarding what you heard and the disparity or the seeming disparity between what you remember hearing and what the 911 call seems to indicate, right?
If you're referring to the call you played in my deposition, yes.
Yes. It just doesn't seem like the same screams to you, does it?
Well, one's coming from an audio and one I was hearing in person, so it didn't sound the same to me.
So
no.
you perceived them differently than you heard on the 911 call, correct?
Yes.
You're certainly not suggesting to this jury that they're not the same screams from different perspectives, are you?
I couldn't say.
Okay. You are aware that Ms. Lauer's call to 911 was timed perfectly with the screams that she heard and, of course, the gunshot that you heard, correct?
What do you mean?
Okay. You heard the gunshot, correct?
Correct.
And you've also heard that gunshot on Ms. Lauer's tape, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So going back in time from the gunshot backwards on Ms. Lauer's tape, you heard on Ms. Lauer's tape that there was probably 40 seconds worth of screaming that was recorded on that call, correct?
Judge, that's a speculation in terms of the time.
He can testify if he knows.
Sure.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. You remember listening. I tell you what, here's what we'll do. If we might just have a moment, I'm going to let you listen to Ms. Lauer's call again. And I want you, when you're listening to it, I want you to think through. I will tell you that 45 seconds into the phone call, you're going to hear the gunshot.
Mm-hmm.
So be ready for that, because I want you to then testify what you remember seeing sort of in timeline with when you remember hearing the shot, okay?
I wouldn't be able to tell you.
I'm going to let you hear the tape, and
Okay.
then we'll go from there. If I might have a moment to set that up, Your Honor.